This is the plan. That's okay. Okay, this really is the Planning Commission meeting for September 25th, 2023, and I'll call the meeting to order. All right, first up on the agenda is the last meeting minutes. Does everyone have a chance to review those? And if so, any corrections, changes? Okay. And Commissioner McGrath, you are not here, so it would be Commissioner Peters, myself, and Commissioner LeBron. Okay, any questions? None? Okay, if not, we'll go ahead and consider those approved. All right, next on the agenda, we have a public hearing continued from the previous meeting. This will be for our Greg J. Homes. It's going to be preliminary and final plat 2023-21 South Oaks 4th edition. Staff report by John Hinsman. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Planning Commissioners. I will put up a map of the property that we're looking at today. And as the chairman noted, we did review this in a public hearing last month, and it was tabled in both the public hearing as well as any decision by the Planning Commission for recommendation to the City Council. So I'll go through some background today of the report, of the project we have before us here, and then the chairman can open the public hearing. We can close that, and then we can go back to discussion among the commissioners themselves. So what we're looking at tonight is the preliminary and final plat of South Oaks of Hastings 4th edition. This is a property that is generally located south of 31st Street, west of Century Drive. South Oaks Drive is to the south of it, and Olson Drive is to the east. It's kind of a whole of development that's been sitting there and waiting to be developed for quite some time here. As I've stated previously, this is part of an overall plan that's been before us for over 20 years right now in the last phase of what we term the South Oaks development. The South Oaks development began in about 2000, 2001 as a mixture of different types of housing uses between townhomes and single-family homes. And this is the last phase of it to be developed. Over time, the property that is before us tonight has been planned for different types of uses. When it first came in for development approvals in 2001, it was a townhome development, probably about 48 townhomes or so. And then over time, as the market has switched and the developer has modified the plan, it is now 35 housing units that is being proposed today. And as the Planning Commission may recall, this was before us a couple of years ago as a similar type of development. At that time, I believe it was 33 home sites, so there has been, or 32, there's been 2 or 3 homes that have been added to the subdivision since that time in 2021. The 2021 plan is now null and void. We have 1 year to enable to act on that, to record that, before that becomes null and void. So we're really looking at a new application here, but certainly a lot of history behind it. So looking at the subdivision itself, this is what it looks like. We've got Flagstone Drive going down the middle of it, Alderwood Drive going towards the east, and then we have 35 single-family lots surrounding it. Let's go to this one here. This gives you a better idea of what the development looks like in relation to the neighborhood itself. You can see the townhome developments to the east along Century Drive, and then more single-family homes towards the south and towards the west of the development here. So the street layout itself has been something that's been planned since the early 2000s. The street width of 50 feet for the right-of-way and for this 28-foot street width was also something that's been planned since that time. These are street widths and right-of-way sizes that are a little bit smaller, a little bit narrower than we would have on a typical subdivision, but have been approved in other similar subdivisions around town and was approved as part of the development plan in the early 2000s for this development here. So looking back at our last meeting, we met on August 28th. We did have a public hearing at that time. We had some individuals that provided comment. There was some concerns pertaining to the number of homes in the area, traffic and safety concerns for children, snow management, loss of trees, and increase of homes from past plat applications. And at that time, the commissioners discussed the rationale for a planned residential development, street width, and storage of snow. So that was the discussion we had at that time. We did table any action on that before the Planning Commission to wait until the stormwater plan was developed. That was really the reason why we had asked for a tabling. Now, the stormwater development in this plat, most of it is going through this stormwater pond, which is towards the northeast corner. This would be in what's termed an outlot, which would mean this would not be on an individual's property, but would be on a separate lot of record. In this circumstance, what the city would be doing is would be taking ownership of this outlot, and the maintenance responsibilities would be borne upon the new residents of the subdivision here. We have two options in which to do that. Normally, what we do is we establish a homeowners association to do that. In discussions with the developer, what we're doing here is going to have the city take ownership of that property for the outlot for stormwater basin, but that the maintenance responsibilities of this would be assessed back to the property owner. So when you're dealing with a stormwater pond in a development, every so often, every few years, you've got situations there in which it needs to be excavated out or mucked out or other technical terms like that to basically make sure that it functions correctly. So we do have that within here, and that would be part of the development agreement that we would be bringing forward to City Council, would have those attributes within it. So that's one of the things that we were waiting on. We did have a lot of back and forth between our city engineers and the developer's engineer on this one, and we're to the point right now where the city engineer can recommend bringing this forward to the council with the stormwater plan that's there. One of the things that we wanted to ensure was that the stormwater plan functioned within the realm of the outlots and the easements that were established within this plat. We feel that it does, and it should not pose a problem, so that we can now recommend approval and move this thing forward. As far as some of the technical things that we're looking at here for Planning Commission, we're looking at both the preliminary plat and the final plat. Again, the preliminary plat really sets the parameters for development itself, the easement, stormwater, so forth. And then the final plat puts it into place. Sometimes these can happen in different phases within a development. Other times they can happen at the same time. So in this circumstance, we're doing both the preliminary and the final plat at the same time here. When you look at the lot layout here, two more lots than the 2021 approval. It is zoned R3, and the lot sizes range from about 4,500 to 7,100, and we've got an average size of about 5,280 for the development itself. So we do have a minimum lot size of 5,000 square feet. We also have the planned residential development scenario, which allows for some flexibility within some of the lot sizes within the development. And again, the planned residential development approval that we did on this project goes back to the early 2000s, in which we had situations in which we had less density north of 31st Street and more density south of 31st Street to balance this off for the subdivision. So that this is consistent with that past approval on here. There's a couple of outlots here. The outlot D, which is the stormwater pond, will be owned by the city. There's also a couple outlots created along here, which would be transferred to the adjoining property owners. This is a deal that the developer had worked out with adjoining property owners to give them roughly another 10 feet of property in the backyard. If you look at an aerial map of the area, which I think I do have, it doesn't show it really well here, but there's already some encroachments back here, so it would essentially satisfy those encroachments by putting that on the property. We do have some fees that would be paid with this. Park dedication. In park dedication, the Park and Rec Commission can either recommend land be dedicated for a park, so new physical park within the subdivision, or they may recommend what's termed cash in lieu of land, which is cash paid for park development, but not necessarily a park developed within the subdivision. When we reviewed this a few years ago, the Park and Rec Commission made a recommendation that they would prefer to have cash in lieu of land. What they base that upon is their park and recreation plan. It's part of our comprehensive plan, in which they take a look at existing park locations and future park locations, and then we base our decisions of park dedication on, hey, was there a park that was looked at upon this area or not? And with that latest comprehensive plan, there was not, so we do have the cash in lieu payment recommended here. So I think that's most of what I've got for the subdivision itself. Again, this is a public hearing continued, so Mr. Chairman, you can open that up or continue that at this time. Upon conclusion of the public hearing itself, asking for a recommendation by the Planning Commission on the subdivision itself. Staff is recommending approval of this tonight, subject to the recommendations within the staff report itself. So you may open the public hearing at this time, and then I can stand for any questions. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, John. Yep, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. And public hearing is now open. If you wish to speak, if you would come up to the podium, state your name and address. Anyone here wishes to speak?
All right, I'm Gabrielle Wegner, and we live on South Oaks Drive, 734. This is my husband, Renee Wegner, and we've been there for about 5, almost 6 years. And we have kind of a wrap list of concerns. Number one is the sheer number of houses back there. And where, just to kind of give you a reference point of where we live, so we are...
You can use the mouse too if you want.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if it was on or not. Oh, where'd it go? There it is. Okay. Oops, why is it? There we go. So this is us right here. So I would consider our lot size to be fairly small. I think when you, if you have an opportunity to drive by and to take a look at that lot size, and then if you were to compare it to the suggested size of lots for the houses to be placed there, it's almost like a 2-for-1. So that's kind of, and it's not exactly, because obviously we're just looking at the map as it's suggested, but it's pretty evident that these lot sizes are very small and very close together. And with that comes concerns with safety. I know all these things were kind of mentioned at the last round, but the safety of the houses being so close together, if there were to be a house fire due to poor electrical pieces within the home, or for a stove left on or whatnot, the entire neighborhood is going to go up in flames because of how close they are together. So that would be a concern number one. For that piece, just with the number of houses. Also with the limited space of the houses, maybe how close they are to the road. It would be how much time is given from when a car backs out of its driveway or out of its garage to the point where it gets to the street. And as we know, there's no sidewalks here, and so there's going to be kids out on the streets because there are no sidewalk access, as well as if they want to get to the park that's nearby, they have to use the road in order to get there. And so that is also a concern, is just the overall safety with the number of houses and the limited sidewalks, as well as warning time between the time when you back your car out into the street. So that would be something that I think should be considered as well. As it was talked about, there were a lower number of houses that were suggested to be in here, and then that number has increased. So really just to look at what is the purpose of those, that increase in the number of houses. When we think about the trees that are along there, preservation of mature trees, I think is something to consider, especially when you are taking all of that green space away. Once that green space is developed with housing, it is very, very unlikely that will ever be restored back to natural land that provides a variety of things, whether it be air for us or habitat for migrating animals. Anything else that you want to add?
Yeah, I would like to add too. I know we have been talking about the houses, and we talked about it used to be townhomes slated. Well, with the changing market and everything, we can really compare the thing back to townhomes. And when we look in 2017, 30, single homes are much different than today in 35. Also, what caught my attention is the zoning district established a minimum lot size of 5,000 square feet, and approximately half of the lot size are below 5,000 square feet. And I know there's flexibility, but really, my question is also, what is the city getting in terms of value here? Because are we trying to cram as many houses in here and then get revenue and make money? Or are we really thinking about quality of life and home ownership and this kind of thing? I mean, yes, the market is what it is, But also, if you think about what the homes sell right now, and when we can build homes for a certain price, I know that builders set a certain perimeter of house sales. However, if you look at the market, what's the quality going to be of these new houses too? You should think about that as well. If you sell cheap, is the quality going to be equal to that? So that's one concern with the sizes of the houses. Also, in terms of the park dedication fee, my question to the city would be, the money, and as we have seen, inflation takes a toll over time. So the money you get today will not be the money in the future to repair things in the park. I know it's coming from the Recreation Commission, the recommendation. However, I would like to reconsider it and maybe either increase the amount or even consider putting a park back there, because we have to cross streets without sidewalks to go to our park. And if I think about our own toddler, loving the park, loving the outside, crying to come back inside every day, and with that many cramped houses, no park access, more cars, more people, smaller streets, it's a really concerning safety hazard for our family. So overall, when we think about developing this land, I think we should consider quality, amount of houses, and really think about the value the city gets, because Hastings is known for Hastings. We're not talking about Lakeville or Rosemount or any other bigger developments with different populations. And I think we should really stay true to who we are and not really trying to cram as many things and get revenue and really also think about the residents who live in the neighborhood, not just the builder and those kind of things. So I would really like for the commission to reconsider this approval and really go back and think what we want with this land to do and how we want this to look, and make it the best solution for our city and for our residents and for the community who lives in this area.
I think another thing too to look at is really what is the practicality with the number of houses. I know last time I really encouraged you to drive by and physically look at the space and just imagine 35 houses, because I know when we look out our back window, I'm trying to multiply and it seems like 25, maybe I shouldn't be suggesting numbers, but it seems like that would be a more reasonable amount. And when I think about some of the other things like garbage and recycling days, if you ever have to drive on a smaller street with everybody's stuff out, and then there's two-way traffic, and there's buses, and there's just, it gets congested. And I know last time it was brought up that, per house, they're allotted roughly like 2 cars. So you take that number of houses and you multiply that by 2 cars, and that's the amount of traffic that's potentially going to be within this space. And we know that fluctuates as well, because, somebody's got a teenage driver, so that's a 3rd car. And so really just to consider the practicalities around the sheer number of houses, as well as the safety concerns. I know snow removal's been brought up multiple times, but again, too, I think it really comes back to that safety piece. And if I'm looking at, some of the space between the garage or the drive and then the road itself, there's really not a lot of warning time for somebody to stop, or for a kid to stop on their bike, or to even be seen on their bike when they're driving by. So I know these are things that we restated last time, but just really consider take-home messages are the safety with the kids that could be living in this community, the preservation of the green space, the practicalities around garbage day and what that looks like, as well as buses picking up kids, and just the overall understanding of what that space looked like. So like I said, I encourage you to drive by and see it for yourself to determine whether or not you feel like this number of houses would be applicable in this situation. So. Well, good.
Thank you.
All right, thank
Okay.
you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, yep, come on up.
Greg Jablonski, Greg J. Holmes. Just to comment on some of the items that came up. We built the home she referred to. Remember the year, quality will be the same. I'm assuming that everybody understands that we've built in this town for many years, and we'll build the same construction, same method, 2x6 walls. Everything will be accordingly done. Talking about sidewalks, the neighborhood they're in doesn't have sidewalks. Is that correct?
Not the direct neighbor.
Okay, so there's no sidewalks. Yes, yes. And that is, again, more of, quote, a collector street. And I think that's kind of the path that the city has chosen because it seems appropriate to put your resources in where the most use is going to be. And the other item was, I know we keep talking about park dedication fee and that today's amount won't suffice for the future. But this is a current price, correct, John, for parkland?
This is current, we just increased it substantially over the last couple of months. This application came in prior to the change we had, so we did raise the amount for park dedication fee a couple of months ago.
Thank you. Setbacks, as far as setbacks, and talk about fire and safety in homes, these setbacks will be the same as their home, 7-7, is that correct, John?
Yeah, the side yard setbacks will be similar to that one. The lots themselves are different dimensionally. Some of them are deeper than the lots you're proposing, and some of them may be a little bit wider. But
Yes.
as far as the minimum setbacks go, they would meet our requirements.
Yeah. And I think what's happened to the market, the market is continually changing, if not on a yearly basis, maybe even a monthly basis. There are projects in other communities very nearby that are almost similar to this, and that's maybe where we've made some adjustments looking at their floor plans weekly. There's other builders that are doing the same homes. They're not too far distant from the ones that are on the south side of South Oaks Drive. We've also built what we call our heritage plan on Century Drive. So these really aren't new. And I believe that back when we did this in 2012, 2013, those were relatively smaller lots. And so today is just currently what's happening in the market. And we don't always drive the market. The market sometimes drives us to what we need to perform to. So I think that's changes that are always happening. So the style of homes I think is very nice. We built them before. They're the same quality. And I think that'll be very nice. And I did happen to go through another community on the way back from our cabin, and it had townhomes. I've just decided that's not the program I want to go with. And I wish I could find my picture and show it to you, but maybe I'll forward it to John just so everybody knows. And the townhomes that we saw are going to be much higher in density. And I just didn't feel that that was right for me personally. We've built these homes, and it just fills a need. I think that the nice thing about this is we'll have 35 brand-new homes in that price range of 300 to 350. 300 will be hard to achieve, but 325 to 350 are current prices that we will offer, and that's factual. And I think when you offer homes like that, there's very little on the market. It will fulfill the needs for 35 new families, as these folks were new to our community. We're going to have new people coming to our community. We're going to be able to serve people that live in this community that right now can't find homes. It's very difficult if you're looking for a home in that 300 to 350. And so I think those are really, really the good things. It will help to support our schools. They'll give us 35 new families to the school district. And I think there's a need to have population in our schools to make those function as well as they can. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Yeah, you can come back up, sure. Just make sure that whatever comments you make are newer than what we have already on file, just to.
Yep. We probably don't need to restate our names and things. Okay, I guess a question I have is, there is a house for sale in our neighborhood, and I'm not exactly sure on the year. We haven't looked it up yet. It is, yes. This one of these two. It's one of these two houses here. It's on the market for, we believe, $364,000. So how do you get a new build within the 300 to 350 if the current, I mean, I don't know. I don't know that, how that housing piece works, but that would just be my question, of the practicalities around that price range suggested. And I'm not going to nitpick things, but also if we're being completely honest, I think if we knew the adjustments that we've had to make within our home and we knew the quality of the home that was built, I don't know if we would have chosen that home. And unfortunately, when we have looked at other homes, there's been a reputation upheld within the city between when we had a furnace guy come out and we talk about how we have the same layout and, oh, you have a Greg J. home? Yep. Oh, yep. Okay. So I think we're all on the same page of like the quality of what to expect. And even with a realtor that we had met recently, I guess without even asking, reassured us that it was not a Greg J. home built. So I don't know what that means in terms of what future homes are going to be built like, but those were some things that were shared with us that were kind of more eye-opening. So I think when we're thinking too of quality of homes, something that needs to be considered is everything that's inspected within the home should uphold what the standard is and what the expectations are. And I think that would also go back with if the city has certain expectations, just because this plot of land has been debated about for the last over 20 years, doesn't mean that there should be any sort of negotiation beyond what would be determined in any other builder's circumstance. So that's something that I would also want to have upheld, is the expectations that the city does have for the listed and recommended items.
Additionally, I think the safety concern still stands and they weren't addressed. So in terms of sidewalks and safety and parking and those kind of things, it's still very cramped. And I think a quote last time was used that was, why do we try to fit 25 pounds of potatoes in a 20-pound sack here? I think development is great. However, really we should think about the quality and the amount of houses. And markets will change. Today is today. We don't know what the future will be. Nobody knew we're going to have 11% inflation a few years ago. Did anybody predict that? So we can't really predict the future. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Anyone on Zoom? No? All right. Anyone else? Okay. If not, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And we will open it up to commissioners for questions, comments. Commissioner Peters.
Thank you. I have a question about Outlot D and just understanding how that would work. So the city would own the outlot and then the maintenance would be assessed back to the homeowners. So I have two questions about that. First, is that common practice in other areas of the city? And then second, is it assessed back to all the homeowners in that development or just the ones that are adjacent to it? I'm assuming all the homeowners.
Sure. Outlot D would be owned by the city, and then the maintenance responsibilities for it would be assessed across the entire subdivision, the entire 35 lots. So not just the ones that are adjacent to it, but all of the 35 lots. We've made the determination that all stormwater within this development flows into that pond. Therefore, all the properties within this development benefit from doing so. What we've done within the city, we've done stormwater assessment in two ways. One, a developer can have a homeowners association, and that homeowners association can have responsibility for it. What that typically does is the homeowners association will realize there's something that needs to be done. They'll hire a contractor and then assess that funds back through the homeowners association. With the city taking ownership of it, we would be in there evaluating the stormwater pond itself and then hiring our contractors for it. So the reality would be that you're going to have a bill that's going to be sent either from the city or from a homeowners association to collect for the maintenance responsibilities on this.
Anyone else? Further discussion, questions?
I'm just
Commissioner
going,
Peters.
I guess I don't really have a question, but more of a comment. I think like, you know, when our job is to look at this very objectively, and, you know, I appreciate the comments about like what's happening in the market, but that doesn't feel like that's our responsibility to look at all, even though I understand what everyone is saying. I guess when looking at this, we have the answers now about the drainage. It seems like all the minimal requirements are being met or are flexibly being met. And so objectively looking at it, it seems like it is something that we could send on to the city council. I don't think there's any more questions that I would have on this, and I don't think we're going to get any more change on it. So to me now, yep, they've done what they're supposed to. It minimally meets requirements, and, you know, I think we've done our job with this, and our personal feelings or subjective feelings about whether or not we think it's a good thing isn't really relevant.
Commissioner Peters, thanks. Well, I think you summed it up. I mean, that's kind of where I was going. So Planning Commission, just a little bit of education. Planning Commission looks at planning and zoning. Okay, so she is right. We can't look, we don't take into account the market, the type of build, the history, and all of that, even though that personally I completely understand, I completely get it. I would love to see sidewalks, but they're not required. I would love to see bigger lots, but they meet the specifications that the city has set forward, and the application meets those specifications. I'd love to see a park in there, but we can't require it because the ordinance allows them to pay park fees in lieu of building a park. That's just the city. That's the way the city ordinance works. I personally don't like the way this is going with the, inserting an entire development within another development. I think the planning aspect of it is a little backwards, if you ask me. I'm not a developer, I'm not a realtor, but personally, I don't like the way this was done. So, but there's nothing against doing it this way. It's just not ideal for the residents that are surrounding it. You're right, normally you build out, or you kind of do it concentrically so that you're not, going in between homes. And like you said, there's only 2 points that you can really go in with construction equipment, and you're going to severely affect somebody's enjoyment, of their property just by looking at this schematic up here on how they're going to get construction equipment in and materials in for 35 homes. So I get that completely, 100%. But from a planning commission perspective, we look at planning and zoning. They're not asking for a variance. The lots meet the necessary sizes. They're not asking for anything outside of what we required. We've gone back and forth with the drainage. They've met those requirements. The city engineers have looked at it. The traffic studies were done and all of that. So while we completely understand what you're saying here, for the planning commission, this is just a recommendation. Okay, so we are we're kind of an advisory commission to the city council. So you will have another opportunity to go to the city council or talk to your council member about this before it goes on their agenda, and John will discuss it at the end of our vote here. But and you'll be able to address the city council when it's on their agenda. Am I correct? Yes.
Yes, this
So-
will be on the council agenda.
Yeah, so it won't be like it won't be a public hearing per se necessarily, but if it's on their agenda, you have a right to appear in front of city council at the beginning of the meeting and speak to anything on the agenda. And that's where a lot of the personal concerns might be a best place to voice those. But when we're looking at it from a planning and zoning perspective, we're kind of boxed in, like Commissioner Peters said. We're kind of boxed in with what we look at as far as does it meet the zoning? Does it meet the planning? Originally it was supposed to be, how many hundreds of houses in townhomes? Originally, 100 and, what was the original amount back in 2002?
In this area here, I think it was 48 townhomes.
48.
Altogether, I think it was around 200 home sites.
Yeah, and now we're at version 4.0, 20 years later, and here's where we are within the parameters of what the city has set forth. So Commissioner Peters was spot on with her analysis of it. We have to set aside our personal, if you will, opinions, and objectively look at the plot as it's presented in front of us, and they're meeting all the expectations that the city has set forward. Does that make sense? So I'm encouraging you to take advantage of the city council meeting when that comes forward in 2 weeks and address them as well, or your council member, because you have a city council member assigned to your ward. So there's planning commission and there's city council, and I just want you to, the process is sometimes a little difficult because you think once we approve it, it's approved. We are recommending something tonight to the city council, and the city council makes the ultimate decision whether to approve or deny based on our discussion and recommendations. Does that make sense? So, just wanted to clear that up on your comments. So, thank you. Commissioner Peters, go ahead.
Well, given all that, I'll make a motion to approve the preliminary and final plot, provided it meets the conditions laid out in the proposal.
And are you going to be approving both the preliminary and the final as one motion, or?
Can they be done as one?
They can be done as one,
Yes.
if you prefer. Want to do as one? Okay. So we have a motion to approve the preliminary and final plat as presented. Do we have a second? Commissioner
Second.
McGrath? Commissioner McGrath, second. Any further new discussion?
Just one.
Commissioner Bryce, go. Or LeBron.
So it was pointed out that the minimum lot size for some of these is smaller than what's laid out in the zoning code. And I believe that's because it's a PRD, a planned residential development. I will say, I don't think there's any sort of sunset or anything on that, is there? That's kind of a previously determined, and that's a long-standing
Sure,
route of
Commissioner, I
development.
I can give some explanation on that. When the planned residential development is part of the zoning, so when we rezoned the property, and this was some time ago, we rezoned it as a planned residential development with that flexibility built in. So that was early on in the subdivisions, and that doesn't expire.
Okay, yeah, so that's part of the zoning ordinance. And then the stipulations for the area that's zoned as such, is that available? Can someone from the public find that? It just seems like, I guess just my comment, and this isn't anything, plus or minus on the proposal before us, but that, yeah, it just seems a little opaque, especially one that's so old that hasn't been used, if that makes sense. So is that available? Can we find that somewhere for this specific development, or say there's another one that hasn't been developed, a planned residential development approved zoning district? So what the city requires for that, can that be found somewhere, or is that just kind of
Right, yeah.
internal?
We have that.
Okay, okay.
Okay, thanks. Any further discussion? All right, if not, we got a motion in a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that motion carries.
Okay. And Commissioners, this should be, might be, on the next city council agenda for October 2nd. And I say that we're working on putting together some agreements to carry forward along with the plat approval. I'm uncertain whether those will be available this week or not. So we may end up having this move forward on the 16th rather than the 2nd. What I will do with the Wegners, I've got their email. I'll let them know what's going on here. It could go one way or the other on that one with the agreements and with the developer as well. We're putting together the stormwater agreement as we speak right now. So we're hoping we get everything together there that we can bring this forward on the 2nd, but if not, it'll be on the 16th.
Okay, thanks, John.
Okay.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks for coming tonight. Feel free to stick around for the adjournment if you'd like. Other actions?
Other actions, I don't have anything else to report to the Planning Commission. We do have a meeting scheduled in 2 weeks, which we will be holding. There will be a variance request ahead of us for some solar facilities at the Dakota County Administration Center on Highway 55. So we'll be looking at a potential variance to that. That's the only thing I have on the agenda so far for that meeting.
Okay, thanks. Commissioners, any other items? Okay, if not, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Sir, can I speak on something else?
Well, we just closed, is it on something the public hearing?
Not on this
Oh,
subject, be it
no, not typically, no, not unless we have it on the agenda. Yep, yep.
Yeah. We could talk after the meeting, too.
Yeah,
if
we can,
help
you can have
out.
this conversation after the meeting,
Yeah.
but, yep. Okay, motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right, Commissioner Peters, motion to adjourn, second. Commissioner LeBron, all in favor, say aye. Aye, opposed, motion carries, we are adjourned.